Ready, start. Sir, we find that in the Goloknath's case it was laid down that Parliament had no power to alter the fundamental rights which included the rights to property. Sir, you would recall in the Goloknath's case the justice had said that if the aim was to introduce a socialistic pattern of society, then it was a mistake to incorporate property as a fundamental right. It is that mistake which was revealed in 1950 when land legislation were struck down. It is that mistake which was revealed in 1953 when, in Bela Banerjee's case, the Supreme Court said that full compensation has to be paid. It is to rectify that mistake that in 1955 Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru introduced the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. It is that mistake that resulted in the setting aside by the Supreme Court in February 1970 of the Banks Nationalization Act. It is that mistake that resulted in setting aside in December 1970 of the provision for the abolition of the privy purses. Para. Today, sir, when we discuss this question, we have to discuss the basic question of the conflict that arose as result of Goloknath case, by which the property right became supreme and by which the power of Parliament to amend was nullified. With regard to that, we must have a refresh look. The Supreme Court in that important case tried to take a second look and overhauled the Goloknath's case, and that there is a concept of the basic structure of the Constitution. What happened in the Goloknath case? Parliament's right to amend the Constitution. The fundamental right was taken away. In that important case, a doctrine of basic structure was introduced, but the doctrine of basic structure as now developed by the Supreme Court is undefined and it is unchallenged. The question has now come before the Parliament to finally decide on these basic questions. First, we have to decide what is this basic structure. There has been two urges before the Parliament. One is the socialistic urge to fight against inequality and to introduce socio-economic legislation. The obstacle here has been the fundamental right to property. There is another urge of Parliament, that is the democratic urge to preserve life and liberty. This should also be given place in our Constitution by the Indian Parliament. The property right which stood in the way of bank nationalization, stood in the way of abolition of the privy purses, and also stood in the way of abolition of the Jamindari system that has to go in totally. Stop. Finish.